amazingly, as Jason talked about preferential treatment and how the NBA needs to be consistent with their one-game suspensions and fines, what have you. In a way, I think we agree on this, so does ESPN, as they canned Barstool Van Talk after one episode. And how long were they even in, not session?
10 days of filming.
No. How long from when they started to when they cut up the entire,
I don't know.
I want to say it was 3 to 4 days, maybe 4 at the most. So Portnoy El Presidente on Twitter, free plug, went on social media yesterday and gave a emergency press conference, and he ripped into ESPN, and many other people have ripped into ESPN. Yet what we have here is a failure to communicate. And with ESPN going out and getting Barstool, it seems like, Jason, they knew what they were signing up for by employing Big Cat and PFT Commenter, giving them their own show, which, by the way, for a 1 a.m. Eastern time slot, did really pretty well for its debut. Did it do amazing, get 1 million? No, of course not, but they're not trying to get 1 million because it's still cable. But with that being said, is ESPN wrong for canning Barstool Van Talk, citing essentially that they didn't know what they signed up for?
Just go, well, yeah, in that specific question, we didn't know what we signed up for. Get the fuck out of here. John Skipper's quote itself was, while we had approval on the content of the show, I erred in assuming we could distance our efforts from the Barstool site.
You said erred?
Erred.
Is it aired?
I think it's aired. You're right, I'm sorry.
Can you get a vote?
Assuming. I think it's aired. It is aired.
Raise your hand.
Aired?
I got
aired.
It's aired.
Aired. With an A? Aired.
Indiana University.
So look, there's a bigger picture of this, which we'll get into in just a second, because like ESPN, it's so easy to make fun of them. It just is. This isn't a giant defense of Barstool, but as I've said, if you've ever listened to Part of My Take, it is separate from Barstool's content. PFT and Big Cat do not go down the same route on that specific podcast that Barstool Sports goes down when it comes to a lot of their posts, a lot of their smoke shows, a lot of the, like somebody was, here's a great example. Someone was sharing the picture of the pumpkin where it's got 2 holes, and the Snapchat that was reposted by Barstool was, you walk into the kitchen, see this pumpkin, what you do.
It's like such a World Star thing.
It is exactly a World Star thing, and it's just stupid.
I thought you were talking about Lara Trump's tweet yesterday with the pumpkin.
Which is just funny.
Right, with the pumpkin hat.
It's stupid and it's like dumb men's humor, but like John Skipper, I really hope in my mind, John Skipper saw that post and was like, we can't have this show anymore. What would I do with that pumpkin? I'd put pants on that pumpkin.
You know,
I would cover up that pumpkin.
You know, it'd be so ironic is if somehow dug through John Skipper's old blog posts or tweets, and he was like, "Oh man, I love Kyle's dad when he referenced Backdoor Sluts 9 on South Park episode 25."
So the bigger picture thing with this is like, what is ESPN doing? They of course knew what Barstool Sports content was, and here's the craziest part. Barstool Sports, I'm not sorry, not Barstool Sports, ESPN wants to go out and get a younger audience. They are starting and have probably already tipped the scale, tipping point status, like Malcolm Gladwell, of entering the Fox News, CNN, MSNBC model of our viewers are over 50 years old now. We can't do anything aside from live sports broadcast. And I'm talking about like not we're sports guys and we work in sports media, therefore our view of sports media is different. I'm talking very different. Casual. So I don't think many people have ESPN running during the day, and I think a lot of people are watching at night towards like the 6th, the Michael Smith, Jamel Hill show, SportsCenter, the Scott Van Pelt show. I think that's starting to hit an audience that is just way older. So what happens? They get 88,000 viewers in a 1 a.m. time slot. 64,000 of those viewers, so like over 70%, 18 to 34. Yeah. You hit the demographic you wanted to. Stick with it. Stick with that demographic, because you can't say now after 5 days, oh man. I do think additionally that Portnoy, as you mentioned too, just talking and talking and talking and talking hurt Barstool Van Talk. I think if Portnoy never said a thing.
A little bit, because here's the thing, like you have and this is just a part of being a bigger media company, is that you hire somebody like Erica Nardini, who is brilliant at running Barstool, securing deals. It took her forever to get the ESPN deal, and then she secured it. Right. She's so professional in the way that she goes about her Twitter and using her Twitter as a PR machine. So when you have somebody who is at the top, but then someone is a little bit higher, so Nardini and then Portnoy, what happens is you have clashing styles where Portnoy out-lambasts Nardini, not just she's trying to do it, he just overclouds everybody else by being like, well, here's the thing, they didn't get it right, they got it wrong, well, fuck this and fuck that. And like, then again, and I'm contradicting myself here, but that is the Barstool model and what the fans want to see, so I guess I understand why he's doing it. Here's my thing with ESPN, and we've talked about consistency so many times. They've been completely inconsistent with everything that they've done and who they employ. Meanwhile, suspending Jamil Hill, but keeping Hank Williams Jr. on, but then the whole Barstool episode and just canning people and hiring people in right and wrong places. My one other thing is that as they're trying to get a new audience, I thought that they made the right call by hiring not only PFT and Big Cat, but also Katie Nolan, because they're trying to grab this digital demographic just to come over to ESPN and watch. And the thing is, if you continue to poach those people from digital, offer them bigger contracts than they would ever get getting paid by the internet and going to ESPN, I feel like your viewership will go up, and there will be a transcending way of turning this 50+ demographic who watches highlights into our demographic who's going to ESPN, whether it's on YouTube TV or Roku or what have you. Nonetheless, they would get numbers in return by hiring those people.
Correct, it's a lot, it's about personality. There's something that PFT and Big Cat and Katie Nolan, to use your 3 examples, that's Scott Van Pelt. These are the model that made ESPN so effing successful in the first place. So I'm gonna get into, before I get back to that point, I wanna throw through the list of, thanks to Barry Pacheski for using this headline, because I did take it from him, ESPN shooting themselves in the dick. This is not in any chronological order.
Why are you saying it, but then putting up stars?
Well, you know, I think it's funnier that way. I don't know, I mean, the joke might not hit, but I thought it was kind of funny to put, dick at stars, because, dick.
I don't know, man. I thought you could have raw dicked it up there.
Could have, oh my God, so much information. Rehired Hank Williams Jr. They did it because they cared so much about being perceived as being liberal that they were like, we got to bring back a conservative guy. Look, see, look, we fired Kurt Schilling, but now we got Hank Williams Jr.
Look, whenever
back.
you can compare someone to Hitler, I think you're on my shit list.
Sure, ESPN research on bias and viewership report. This is one of my favorites. ESPN's own research team dug into their viewership and said, look, many people think we have a liberal bias, but it turns out we're very favorable amongst conservative viewers. Yeah, no shit, your Monday Night Football broadcast is going to bring in conservative viewers because it's a Monday Night Football broadcast. It's football, it's football. Next. Layoffs, 100 employees fired in May. The reason I put the 400 additional ones laid off over summer of 16 through summer 17 was because the 100 employees were named, noted employees. They were hosts, they were known household names, like I think it was like John Clayton and shit like that. There was even more writers, producers, behind the scenes production team. People will never understand how much work goes into producing a show, especially even at the ESPN level. And when people lose jobs because of bad deals, which we'll get to in a second, bad NBA deals, bad Monday Night Football deals, billions of dollars owed to sports rights broadcasts.
Just $1 billion for Monday Night Football.
Just $1 billion for Monday Night Football. You could lay off 500 of those employees. It doesn't even pay for one Monday Night Football broadcast. The NBA deal, great for the NBA.
Great point.
Awful for ESPN. I've wrote about this for a few different places at this point because I still don't think ESPN has an extreme liberal bias. I think they care now way too much as being perceived as liberal.
Oh my God! Breaking news! Breaking news! They just hired Clay Travis.
ESPN?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I actually believed you for a second. Bad for ESPN, and here's why, very simple. I know NBA ratings on ESPN are up 19%. A lot of that has to do with a bleed over from an insane offseason and a pretty good dramatic narrative going into this year. Check back with me in March when players are resting, when Detroit is playing Washington, or I'm sorry, the Cavs are playing the Wizards and John Wall and LeBron James are sitting. Then we'll see how that NBA deal looks then. It's too much money owed. Next. Corey's crushing it right now. Jamil Hill suspension just mangled that whole entire situation. I think everyone knows at this point. I'm not going to hover too long on that point. Next, I had to make the Barstool Van Talk talked about in the beginning. I had to make the graphic smaller. The fantasy football auction segment. Somebody in their right mind thought that was a good idea. And then lastly,
I totally forgot about that.
This is all within like an 8-month, pulling Robert Lee from the NCAA broadcast from William Mary game because they thought that there'd be Twitter backlash because some guy who happened to be named Robert Lee, a very common name, Robert and Lee, would be mistaken and made into memes for Robert E. Lee. So last really quick point.
Okay.
Just like Kevin Durant, you're trying too hard. Take a step back. You're making some really good decisions. I think Katie Nolan's brilliant, and I like listening to Katie Nolan. I think she's someone that absolutely has a position on ESPN and should. You have to follow your old school model. Stuart Scott, the late great Stuart Scott, Kenny Mayne, Dan Patrick. Even when Keith Olbermann was there getting away with fun stuff with Dan Patrick, it was personality driven. None of them played sports at the professional level. None of them. It was all about personality. It was all about how much fun they could have and making SportsCenter fun. Make SportsCenter fun again. I think Scott Van Pelt also does a brilliant job with what he does on the last Word.
The late SportsCenter.
When Fox Sports and ESPN feel the need to bring in experts, guys who played the professional level, the Pedro Martinez's of the world, which makes a great MLB broadcast, but when you overuse these guys, when you hire Michael Vick, when you hire these guys, fans lose connection because we're not watching for the expert, essentially expert opinion. We want the breaking news, we want the highlights, and we want to see these guys joke around and have a good time while they talk about
already killed the model, so there's no way of it coming back.
Nolan. Katie Nolan's a good start.
Oh, Katie Nolan's a good start, but I'm saying what they had with Olbermann and Dan Patrick and Rich Eisen, not only when they were younger, Stuart Scott as well, the late Stuart Scott, RIP. It'll never ever be replicated. And the reason they shot themselves in the dick was because not only did they incorporate so many experts into their broadcast, but they also, at first, I believe this was like circa 2009, they wanted more people who came from local news and were just the done up suit and tie. Here's what's happening with the Steelers and the Browns and da-da-da. And like, I sounded like Ted Koppel there. That was interesting. So my point being, they brought in boring on-air people. I'm not saying everybody, I'm saying some who literally just wanted to get in, throw to a shot, get out, bring in an interview, go to break, come back. There was no personality because ESPN didn't want the personality. And now that they realize that the personality is making its way back in the media, they're trying to do it, but they're so far behind. And this is going for the main broadcasts of SportsCenter and NFL Countdown and stuff like that. Like, oh, I'm gonna throw the challenge flag. Like, they're trying so hard to show personality, but it's already too late. The ship has sailed because they can't undo what they already brought on themselves for at least, it appears to me, 8+ years.
Here's the funny thing. 2 of their most successful shows ever are built on a personality-driven, simple model that is brilliant. PTI and Around the Horn, 2 people, to one person who deserves
2 people and 4 people. 5.
The utmost respect in this industry, and somebody who I have never met. I look forward to hopefully getting a chance to talk to him at some point. Tony Reali is a brilliant host, and that goes across, I would think, not just sports, anything he wants to do. He rose from pretty much sweeping the floors on the PTI studio to being stat boy to getting that hosting job and to just absolutely crushing it for the last decade. That's what sells. That's what works. Nothing about the format has changed in 10 years. It's a 10-year-old, 15-year-old.
For Around the Horn.
Around the Horn, 15-year-old
Around the Horn
format.
and PTI. PTI just celebrated 15,
It's
I believe.
personality driven. Woody Page, if you like him or you don't, he's a funny guy. Bill Plaschke has been in the LA sports writing scene for a century and a half, in all due respect.
Blackistone, McMullen.
Pablo Torre, when they bring on even Bomani at times, like, these are good people. I'd like to see Katie Nolan on Around the Horn. I think that would be another good person to throw in there. But just, it's infuriating because we grew up with ESPN. We grew up watching SportsCenter. I grew up idolizing Stuart Scott. I'm gonna mention his name 1,000 times because Stuart Scott, to me, was part of the reason I wanted to do this.
He made it the Booyah Network.
He wanted the Booyah Network. And don't forget, Stuart Scott experienced so much effing backlash for his style. So ESPN, who at one point was all willing, Stuart Scott's liberal bias, or Stuart Scott's liberal ways, or Stuart Scott's way of pushing the envelope, or Stuart Scott truthfully just being progressive. progressive on a network that wasn't about politics at that point for sure, still pushing the envelopes, bringing a different kind of vocabulary, different kind of language to the show, which made it that much more appealing. Sucks that Stuart Scott's not here anymore.
Yeah.
Cancer sucks, fuck cancer. That's the end of my point.
I double down on that. Alrighty, let us know your thoughts, comment section below. Subscribe to T-Bot T Sports. Thank you for listening to our podcast as well. We'll see you tomorrow.